Snow fell steadily on the Chicago streets as 22-year-old Maya Chen pulled her worn coat tighter against the bitter wind. Her blonde hair was tucked under a knit cap that had seen better days, and she carried a small paper bag containing a day-old sandwich and roll she had purchased with her last $3 from the bakery down the street. Maya had been living on the streets for 8 months, ever since aging out of the foster care system with no family support and no resources to fall back on. She worked occasional odd jobs when she could find them, but winter had made even those opportunities scarce. Every dollar had to stretch. Every meal had to count. As she walked past the alley between 2 office buildings, Maya noticed an elderly man sitting against the brick wall, shivering in clothes that were even more tattered than her own. His gray beard was unkempt, and his weathered hands shook not just from the cold, but from what appeared to be hunger and exhaustion. Maya stopped, studying the man's condition with eyes that had learned to recognize real desperation. She could see that he was in worse shape than she was, probably hadn't eaten in days, and might not survive another night in the falling snow without help. Without hesitation, Maya approached the man and knelt down beside him. "Sir, are you all right?" The elderly man looked up with eyes that held both wariness and hope. "I'm managing, child. Don't you worry about an old man like me." "When did you last eat?" Maya asked gently, already knowing the answer from his condition. "Yesterday, I think. Or maybe the day before. Time gets fuzzy when you're cold." Maya opened her paper bag and pulled out the sandwich and roll, offering them to the man with a smile that warmed the cold alley. "Here, please take these. You need them more than I do." "I can't take your food, young lady. You look like you need it yourself." "I'll be fine," Maya insisted, pressing the food into his hands. "There's a shelter kitchen that opens at 6. I can get something there." What Maya didn't mention was that the shelter kitchen had been closed for 3 days due to a kitchen fire, and she had no idea where her next meal would come from. But looking at this man's condition, she knew her hunger was less urgent than his survival. "God bless you, child," the elderly man said, his eyes filling with tears as he accepted the food gratefully. "There aren't many people who would share their last meal with a stranger." "We take care of each other," Maya replied simply. "That's how we get through." Unbeknownst to Maya, their entire interaction had been observed by someone sitting in a black SUV parked across the street. 35-year-old CEO David Hartwell had been leaving a late business meeting when he spotted Maya approaching the homeless man, and something about the scene had compelled him to watch. David had built Hartwell Industries into one of Chicago's most successful companies. But his wealth and success felt hollow since his wife's death 3 years earlier had left him raising his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, alone. He had grown cynical about human nature, surrounded by people who wanted something from him, professionally or personally. But watching Maya give away what was clearly her only food to someone in greater need stirred something in David's chest that he hadn't felt in years. Here was someone with nothing, choosing to help someone with even less, expecting nothing in return. As Maya walked away from the alley, David made an impulsive decision. He got out of his SUV and approached her. "Excuse me?" he called out, his breath visible in the cold air. Maya turned, immediately wary. Experience had taught her to be cautious of well-dressed strangers, especially men in expensive coats. "I saw what you just did," David continued, maintaining a respectful distance. "That was incredibly generous." "It wasn't generous," Maya replied cautiously. "It was necessary. He needed help." David studied her face, noting the intelligence in her eyes and the quiet dignity she maintained, despite her obvious circumstances. "When did you last eat?" Maya's instinct was to lie, to maintain her privacy and independence. But something about this man's expression suggested genuine concern rather than pity or judgment. "I'll find something," she said evasively. "That's not what I asked," David said gently. "I'm David Hartwell. I run a company downtown and I'd like to buy you dinner. Not as charity, but because anyone who gives away their last meal to help someone else deserves to eat well tonight." Maya hesitated. Studying this stranger who seemed different from the usual people who either ignored homeless individuals or treated them as problems to be solved rather than people to be helped. "Why do you care?" she asked directly. "Because I've forgotten what real kindness looks like until I watched you just now," David replied honestly. "And because I have a daughter, and I hope that if she were ever in trouble, someone would help her the way you just helped that man." Over dinner at a quiet restaurant, Maya learned that David Hartwell was not just successful, but genuinely interested in understanding her perspective on life, survival, and what it meant to maintain hope in difficult circumstances. "How do you do it?" David asked as Maya ate her first real meal in days. "How do you help others when you're struggling yourself?" "Because that's when helping matters most," Maya replied thoughtfully. "When you have plenty, giving is easy. When you have little, giving means something different. It means you understand that we're all connected, that someone else's pain matters as much as your own." David found himself profoundly moved by her wisdom and resilience. "Maya, can I ask you something that might sound strange?" "Go ahead." "What do you want to do with your life? I mean, what are your goals and dreams beyond just surviving day to day?" Maya was quiet for a moment, considering whether to share dreams that seemed impossible from her current position. "I want to help people. I've been thinking about social work. Maybe working with kids in foster care or families experiencing homelessness. I understand what it's like to be forgotten by systems that are supposed to help. What's stopping you?" "Reality," Maya said with a rueful smile. "You can't go to college when you don't have an address or money for tuition. You can't get a job in social work without a degree. It's a cycle that's hard to break." David nodded, understanding that Maya's intelligence and compassion were being wasted because of circumstances beyond her control. "What if I told you that I could help break that cycle?" "I'd say you don't know me well enough to make that kind of offer." "You're right," David agreed. "But I know enough. I know you're someone who gives her last meal to a stranger. I know you're intelligent, articulate, and have insights about social services that come from real experience. And I know my company has internship programs and educational partnerships that could provide both income and schooling opportunities." Over the following weeks, David helped Maya transition from the streets to stable housing and a position as a community outreach coordinator for Hartwell Industries' corporate social responsibility division. Her job involved working with local homeless services organizations, bringing the perspective of someone who had lived the experience rather than just studied it. "You know what surprised me most?" David said to Maya one evening as they worked late on a proposal for a new transitional housing program. "What's that?" "How much you've taught me about leadership and success. I thought I understood business, but you've shown me that the most important skills are the ones you can't learn in business school." Maya looked up from the program guidelines they were developing. "What do you mean?" "Empathy, integrity, the ability to see potential in people that others overlook. You've changed how I run my company and how I raise my daughter." 6 months later, Maya was enrolled in evening classes working toward her social work degree while managing programs that had helped dozens of families transition from homelessness to stability. But more than her professional success, she had become part of David and Emma's chosen family, bringing warmth and perspective to their lives that had been missing since David's wife's death. "Miss Maya," Emma said one evening as Maya helped her with homework, "Daddy says you saved that man by giving him your food." "We helped each other," Maya corrected gently. "That's what people do when they care about each other." "Daddy says you saved us too." Maya looked across the room at David, who was preparing dinner with the kind of attention to detail that came from wanting to create a nurturing home environment. "How do you figure that, sweetheart?" "Because before you came, Daddy was sad a lot even when he was smiling. Now he's happy for real, and I learned that being rich means helping people, not just having money." David smiled, understanding that Maya had taught them both that true wealth was measured not in bank accounts, but in the richness of relationships built on genuine care and mutual support. "You know what I learned from that day in the snow?" Maya said to David later that evening as they watched Emma practice piano. "What's that?" "That sometimes when you give away the last thing you have, you make room for something better than you ever imagined." "I gave away a sandwich and got a family." "I got something too," David replied, taking her hand. I got reminded of what actually matters and who I want to be, not just what I want to achieve. Sometimes the most important business transactions happen not in boardrooms but on snowy street corners. When someone chooses compassion over self-preservation and discovers that the most valuable investments are the ones we make in each other's well-being. If this story reminded you that true wealth is measured by our capacity for kindness rather than our bank accounts, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that their circumstances don't define their worth. Subscribe for more stories about finding family in unexpected places and the power of compassion to transform lives. And let us know in the comments about a time when helping someone else led to unexpected blessings in your own life. Sometimes the most important help we give comes when we have the least to spare.